Hello fellow creature, welcome back to Rooftop Talks. In today's video, I want to show a few comments, and I am taking them out of context, but in some of my more abrasive videos, there's usually like one or two vegans that come along and express concern that the way I'm delivering the truth about our culture of animal abuse and the people complicit in it, the people who are funding it, and I'm speaking a lot of the time to non-vegans, people who are paying and being patrons of this animal abuse. There are vegans that often step forward and express that I should censor my words and try to deliver it in a way which is more friendly, where it doesn't feel as attacking. And that's the topic I want to talk about today and give my thoughts on this idea, like how measured should we be when we're making a general message to the general public where we can't necessarily tailor it. Because trust me, when I'm speaking one-on-one to people, I do tailor it. I tailor what I say very much so. If there's someone who's intellectual, I will deploy a greater vocabulary. I'll put in more niche words to kind of demonstrate through language that I am well read on the subject, for example. That's a form of tailoring one's speech and one's approach to a certain person. If there's a woman who might feel that physically I'm a threat to her, I might become more demure, more soft, just to show that I mean no harm, that my intentions are gentle, so they don't perceive me as a threat. You know, there are these things you can do in a one-on-one context where there's one person sitting or standing opposite you and you're trying to have a conversation with them. And these are things that we're very good at as humans, naturally adapting to the person standing opposite us. The internet is a completely different beast. The internet and television and YouTube videos, they're a completely different beast. I am speaking to a camera lens right now, and there's a little monitor to the left of the camera lens where I can see myself just in case the image is too overexposed, which I think it might be right now, a little bit overexposed, but that's what I can see right now, all right? I can't see who you are. And I have to decide what to say. You have no input because it's a video recording. And I have to choose an angle, something that's going to cut through the noise, potentially, something that's going to create a good enough impression, but something that also compels you to take action. I mean, it's just different. It's a different thing. Later on in the comments, once it's all said and done, you can comment what you think, but it's a different form of communication, and it has its advantages. One of the nice things is that there's no one heckling me or saying detractable things as I'm making this video. So I can literally say what I want. The clear intention of their nasty comments is to try and get me to stop speaking, but they can't. I'm going to keep speaking about the animals, and you can't do anything about it. You can't stop me. You might want to stop me. You can't. I will continue to be a voice for the animals. And that's going to get under your skin. You know, if you're an anti-vegan, that's going to annoy you. And that's a problem for you to come to peace with in your own life. Maybe seek therapy or something. Even so, when a vegan comments on my channel, I actually listen. You know, I will actually take on board what they're saying, because we're on the same team. If we're ethical vegans, we have changed our daily habits and our lifestyles to live in a way in which we're respectful to animals. We're striving to not exploit animals. Anyone who has done that, I'm on their team. It's funny because there are people in my life who will try to appeal to me, and they are people who exploit cows for milk, they exploit bees for honey, vegetarians or flexitarians, and they'll try to tell me that we're on the same team because they sympathize with what I do. But we're not on the same team until you bring your actions in line with your values. Until that day, I'm going to be trying to coax you to my side. I'm going to be trying to compel you to stop exploiting animals. Every now and then a vegan will come along to one of these videos that I make. I understand some of the videos I make, I'm unfiltered. I'm trying to express in a compelling way, in a very immediate, visceral way, the plight of the animals. The plight, meaning like the daily suffrage, the struggles and suffrage of slave animals, often farm animals, but not limited to farm animals. And the typical kind of comment that I sometimes get is like, you're not going to persuade non-vegans by being rude. by being mean, by swearing, by being forward. Now, often this is something that non-vegans or anti-vegans will tell me. They will lecture me this, and I don't give a fuck if one of them says that and they're a non-vegan, because man, you don't know. You have no expertise in means of persuasion, and in fact, you're gonna lie to me if you're a non-vegan or an anti-vegan. You're gonna lie to me and try to misdirect me to use approaches which won't actually compel you to do something. If it comes from a non-vegan, and they tell me to censor my language, or they tell me to dial it down, to add more pleasantries, more politeness, more, I don't know, be more in keeping with what is expected of someone, then, you know, they can go to hell. They can go to hell. But for a vegan to say that, I take it seriously. If 9 vegans tell me, good job, I think this is correct, you've spoken truthfully, and then one vegan out of them says, you're never going to win people over with this approach, I'm going to push back a little bit on this kind of internal censorship within the vegan community, right? That there's certain vegans that want to heavily censor other vegans to conduct themselves in a certain way which represents veganism well, I guess. I'm trying to imagine their point of view, and it's hard because I don't agree with them typically, who say that we have to do the linguistic equivalent of dressing up in a suit and tie. And if I can be blunt, my diagnosis is that these people, including vegans, are very scared of saying the wrong thing. And if we follow that chain of fear, that causal prediction fear, because fear is always like this door that we're afraid to walk through. And so what we need to do is we need to fear set. They would see what's beyond that door of fear. And so I guess they're scared of deterring someone from veganism. And I get that. Like, non-vegans and anti-vegans will tell you that the reason that they're not vegan is because a vegan in their past was mean to them. Said something mean or rude, right? And if you believe that, you're a fool. If you believe their explanation for that, you're a fool. That is not the reason that they're not vegan. The reason they're not vegan is because they perceive to gain from the exploitation of animals. That's not to say that they do gain, but they perceive to gain from the exploitation of animals. Okay, that's the real reason. It's a self-centered reason, and it's not because a vegan was mean to them, right? This is what I say, you can't believe what a non-vegan tells you when it comes to their habits, their indoctrination, their opinions on the animals. You cannot believe them. They lie. That's the only way they're able to stay as non-vegans, is by lying to themselves and by extension to others when they're trying to explain themselves, okay? I'm sorry. That's the truth. I understand the concern, though, that vegans have of saying the wrong thing that's going to lead to the public understanding of veganism as being one of even more negative. Like with all campaigns that stray into politics and social justice, social reform, some of what plays a part is the image, you know, the brand image. And I hate using the word brand, but it is like veganism has a certain brand to it. It's a certain gut feeling that people have when they hear the word. And right now it's not in the best of shapes. I would argue that that's not the fault of vegans. It's certainly not the fault of like activists who implore people to go vegan. It's because of non-vegans. Like, the reason that it has a bad reputation is because non-vegans who perceive to gain from the exploitation of animals, or some of them who realistically do, who run businesses of exploiting animals, they have an interest in that. They want to tell you that PETA rounds up stray animals and kills them. Like, they want you to believe that shit. I hope I'm clearing some things up here and resetting the responsibility of the brand image. And I will also acknowledge that words have power. The conversations we have with people, with members of the public, will set them off in a trajectory. So if you have a good conversation, it will set them off on a different trajectory to where if you have a bad conversation, that will set them off on a negative trajectory. That's totally true. Words have power. I don't want it to ever seem like words Meaningless words are harmless. Their words are not harmless. Words have power. So going through that door, the scary door, the worry is that a vegan is going to say the wrong thing to a non-vegan, and it's going to create the wrong impression. Anti-vegans will jump on it, and it will be the undoing of veganism, and the animals will lose any hope of getting liberation, of getting freedom, or some kind of protection, some form of justice, right? First of all, I disagree that it's the vegan's fault, that it's the animal advocates' fault. In majority of these cases, there are some unhinged vegans out there, and unfortunately, a lot of them get a lot of attention, but they're not typical of advocates for animal rights, despite these distorted perceptions. It's not the fault of someone who slips up and refers to an animal as it instead of he or she. That is an honest mistake, and it's a mistake that's easy to make. I make that mistake sometimes. I don't mean to do that, but when you've been brought up in this indoctrinated world, it can take a lot of time to undo that. You know, we grow up believing that farm animals are objects. And so when I refer to them, I try my best to say he or she or they, but it happens, right? And this is the kind of policing that it's okay to do a little bit of it. It's okay to nudge another vegan and say, hey, you're using it a lot, I just noticed. Like, that's good. I don't like this thing of like vegans canceling certain vegans, like certain advocates. I think that's when it gets a bit too far. And here's my main thing. I'm asking you, if you hear me slip up, if you hear someone make a speech or something and it's not quite how you would say it, I'd say have a little bit of faith in the intelligence of the receiver of that message, okay? The non-vegan, the intelligence of the non-vegan. Now, most of them won't intentionally misconstrue what you're trying to say. Most of them will understand your point. Even if you make an incomplete point, they'll connect the dots and they'll figure out the rest for themselves. It's only the rotten ones that really intentionally misconstrue what you're saying and try to misrepresent what you're saying. Those are unworthy of our attention. I've already spoken too much about anti-vegans. They're not worthy of our attention and our time. But most people are intelligent enough to understand what you're getting at. If the overall thing is like, we should imagine what animals are feeling when they have these things done to them, when they're exploited in this way, is it right? I feel like any discourse that moves people closer to thinking, even for a moment, just thinking about the experience of slave animals is a step in the right direction. Gets my thumbs up, no matter how badly you word it. But this habit of being overly scrutinizing other vegans in their approach, I think it stems from holding a low opinion of the people we're trying to appeal to. This Aaron Sorkin line comes to mind, like, you can't handle the truth. You can't handle the truth. You know, that's a very patronizing attitude to have to an adult as well. I think we should assume that they can handle the truth if you speak it, and not to say like, I'm not even going to say the truth to you. I'm not going to even deliver it in a clear way because I'm predicting that you can't handle it. You don't have the intelligence, you don't have the honesty, blah, blah, blah. There's no point stopping yourself from saying the truth about animals in advance of the person, like before you even give them a chance. Like, give them a chance, tell them the truth and give them a chance to hear it, you know? Give them the truth and see how they handle it. Now, from there, it's true, there are many people who will not change their behavior based on the truth, who will continue to lie to themselves. They'll continue to perpetuate that indoctrination, and they might even become anti-vegans and spread those lies about vegans. And this is where I need this concept, okay? Imagine at the bottom of the screen, there's like a humped curve, okay? You've seen it before. Took this idea from tech, it's about early adopters. Something like an iPhone, there's like a certain percentage of the population who are like, they're really active, they're switched on, they're thinking, and you know, they read the magazines, they read like scientific articles, they're in the tech space, and they'll be the first to buy iPhones. And then there's like the main hump. The main hump is like most people, and they'll only do it if there's a sufficient amount of people who are already on it and who already approve. There's experts that approve and so on. They're people who just like dig their heels in and are like, no. And another time I saw this is COVID. Very quickly, there were epidemiologists when COVID hit who said, please, if you're thinking about going to the airport, going on holiday, don't. Not only are you risking yourself, but you're risking others, you know, herd immunity. You're like, we've got to stop traveling. And this was before there was a travel ban. And I heard this expert who was an epidemiologist, and my family had booked to go on a small holiday for the weekend. And I listened to this guy. And this was before there was any kind of social stigma. There was no like socially reinforced thing. And I said, like, I've got to do my part. And I told my family right then and there, I can't control what you do, but I've listened to this expert and I'm not going to go. I'm not going to travel. You can go without me. I'm staying here at home. And I was expecting my family to all say, you know what, you're right. We should take this virus seriously. Let's cancel the trip. And no one did. They all went on the trip. They all went to the airport. The airport was still up and running, but COVID was on the news, you know, it had reached England. And I was kind of surprised. But looking back on it, I realize now I shouldn't have been surprised. None of them are vegan. They're all in the hump. They're in the main hump of people, or they're stragglers, but I don't think they're stragglers. I'll give them a bit of credit. I think they're in the main hump. I hope you see where I'm making this connection now, how I'm bringing it back to veganism. With veganism, it's just like the adoption hump. I mean, the vegans in the 80s, they're the very early, there's such a tiny number of them, or even earlier, you know. Don't want to leave any of the early vegans out here. They're like the early adopters. A lot of them are philosophers. Some of them worked in agriculture, had a background in agriculture, and are just like, I'm not touching this stuff anymore. They had first-hand experience. A lot of philosophers, people who were really thinking critically, academics. And then it's been starting to build a little bit of momentum, but we're definitely at the beginning. We're at the beginning slope. The people now, I think we can all say that all vegans now are early adopters, at least the ethical vegans. The health vegans, I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what goes through the mind of a health vegan. I guess it's good that they happen to not be abusing animals through their health choices. Great. Or they often do. They buy leather and shit like that. But still, it's better, right? It's good that that is happening at the same time as the ethical vegans are trying to appeal to people. But we're very much at the beginning, right? Now, what comes next? So in a social movement, this includes things like LGBTQ, it includes things like feminism, like all these social justice movements, race equality, things like that. They all follow this adoption curve, all right? Next, you start building that momentum. You start building momentum, and that's when it starts to snowball, and the majority of people get on board with it and are like, you know what, I think you're right. And we're starting to see this already with ideas like factory farming. Like, everyone in theory is against factory farming. Almost everyone. There's very few people you meet who are like, yeah, factory farms. And if they do, they're usually trolling. Usually saying it to a vegan just to get under their skin. Most people are not. That's already kind of reaching the majority opinion. If we extend this out with looking into the future, the stragglers, these are people who dig in their heels. They're conservatives, right? They just want things to stay as they are or as they were. A lot of conservatives are very nostalgic for like 30 years prior. There's this thing, you can see it throughout history. Conservatives, they always idealize 30 years ago, the time of their childhood. They just think like things were better 30 years ago. And you look at the statistics and they weren't better 30 years ago with regards to many things. Sometimes, it depends where we are. That's a very conservative type thing. So on the tail end, they're the stragglers. Now, right now, we haven't reached the majority, no way. It's a tiny minority of ethical vegans. We haven't reached the majority, but you will already, when you're out and about, when you're talking, when you're in family circles, when you're meeting your family for Christmas and it's your extended family, you will already you will come across people who will be the last to change. They will be stragglers. And the important thing is to not waste time on them because they're not ready and they won't be ready for a long time. To not waste time on them, and also do not believe anyone who tells you that your words, your conversations and your rhetoric will affect whether or not they go vegan at this point in time. Because the reality is that the stragglers, nothing you can say to them will get through to them. Nothing. with a social movement, you have to write off a certain amount of the population who will be the last to change, okay? Like with race equality, there's a certain number of people who will be KKK members in 2025. And you might meet them in like really early on, and they will be the last to change. So don't let your interactions or you coming across a straggler affect how you speak to the majority of the hump. Or maybe not the majority, but just the start of that hump. They will self-sort themselves. You don't have to find them and pick them out. You can speak to everyone and they will select themselves. They're a self-selecting group. That self-selecting factor is whether or not they can criticize their own habits and whether they can critically evaluate the society in which they were raised, okay? And also their aversion to violence, but that's a different factor that doesn't always come into play. When I said in that video a little while back, I was responding to certain non-vegans who tell me, they say to me, I could never go vegan. Like, speaking from their own point of view, I could never go vegan. They give me that line. And all I was doing, rhetorically, I was using a device where instead of pushing back, I simply agree with them and show them how ridiculous it is. So I say to them, you're right, you can't go vegan. I'm better than you because I have the ability to go vegan and you don't. You can't. You literally can't. You see, as soon as I start agreeing with that idea of like, they say, oh, I could never go vegan, I could never stop cheese. And I say to them, yes, you're absolutely right. You're not capable of quitting eating cheese. That's how pathetic you are. Like, if I say it, right, if at the moment someone agrees with them and it becomes ridiculous, of course they can quit. Of course they can quit eating cheese. Of course they can change to a vegan cheese. So that's what I was doing in that video. And then vegans come along and they're like, what are you doing? Are you being mean to non-vegans? You're never going to win them over with this thing. No, I'm speaking to specific non-vegans who use this self-deprecating, low self-esteem as a lethargic way to not change and to not improve and to not live in a way which respects animals. It's my way of confronting their argument. And I'm sorry that it went over some vegans' heads, but it's not going to stop me from using every rhetorical tool I know, besides lying, to persuade certain people. But I'm aware that with any of my arguments, with any of the speeches I make, there are going to be some people who are not ready to hear it, or there are going to be some people where that approach doesn't work on them. But even if it works on that 1% of the audience, that will be worth it. There is no real approach or strategy that wins everyone over at once. People try, like AV, Anonymous for the Voiceless, they've got a formula, but it doesn't work on everyone. They've just calculated that's the best one-size-fits-all formula for this point in time. Like where the majority of people are right now mentally, like it works really well for most people, but it's not going to work for everyone. There is no strategy that works for everyone. So we have to try different things, and we have to have certain people like Tash Peterson, shout out to Tash Peterson, great channel, who have like a spearhead approach, like a very confrontational, aggressive, showcasing the violence perpetrated against animals. We have to have people like that, and they're important, they're necessary. And we also need these like top 10 vegan recipes, you know, like these like really like just a little sprinkling of the ethics, but really it's about enjoying food. Like we need both of those types of people. We need, and everything in between. We need to try it all. If I make a more abrasive video, I understand that some people it's not going to work on, but it will work on others. Like there are people who will say, I really appreciated the fact that you just said what I needed to hear and you didn't mince words. You didn't talk around the subject. You just addressed it. That's what I needed to shake me out of my current mindset. That's a lot of people actually that need to be shaken a little bit. Don't try and shoot down what I'm trying. Like if I'm cooking up a certain way of appealing to a certain group of people, of non-vegans, don't shoot it down before it's tried. Okay, let's try everything to get through to people. And I really do believe that as long as it's shifting people's mentality to consider the animal's perspective, I think it's a good thing. One of my policies I decided when I started this channel, which is causing me to hold back even calling out utilitarians, is because in a formation, like if it's us against the world, which it is with vegans, it's us against the world until we are able to bring more people on, our spears need to be pointed outwards. I don't discourage the discourse inside vegan communities. Like, I'm talking to vegans right now. As well as appealing to non-vegans, I'm trying to give support and validation to people who are already vegan. So it's two things I'm trying to do. But when it comes to censoring fellow vegans, I try to not do it because I think that the tactic should be for our spears to be pointed out towards the non-vegans. If we've got our spears pointed in at each other, it's hard to, it's kind of a wasted time, and that time could be more productive in bringing people in and forming coalitions. So yeah, like all these vegans that come down on Jamie Logan because she didn't word her argument correctly, I kind of get it. I also have a different choice of vocabulary to Jamie Logan, but I'm not going to criticize her. She's trying her best and she's doing a pretty good job. She wins a lot of people over. She's able to make her content entertaining as well. That's a real achievement. Making the plight of the animals into like something that is watchable. It's very difficult to actually do that. So I have way more praise for Jamie Logan than I'm ever going to have criticism. Any kind of feedback I'm going to give to someone like that is also going to be backed up with a lot of praise and support, because her heart's in the right place, she's a vegan, and trying her best to appeal to non-vegans. And the other thing I want to explain about non-vegans, from my observation, is that non-vegans don't hate animals, they're not against animals, they just don't think about animals, ever. That's the truth. These slave animals, chattel slave farm animals like cows, pigs, and chickens, it's as if they don't exist except as materials, like cooking ingredients. That's the only way in which they exist in the mind of a non-vegan. Until a vegan or an animal advocate comes along and shifts that focus to, these are living creatures who are sensitive about the conditions that they're kept in, who it affects them when we exploit them negatively. So I try to remember that, but sometimes those people need to be shaken out of their trance that they're in, their indoctrination. But trust me, even a badly worded argument that gets them to consider the experience of these animals who are treated horrifically, it's a step in the right direction. If I slip up and get the wording slightly wrong, if they're an intelligent person, they'll understand the gist of what I meant. If you're a vegan, please, talk about it from your point of view. Talk about how you feel. Use as many words as you need. Use whatever words you think accurately describe where you're coming from and what you think about the animals. Try and be a voice for the animals, even if you know you're not going to get it perfect. Because I know I'm not going to get the perfect words. I try. I'm trying to learn and study from the best animal advocates and try and create my own synthesis that takes the best rhetoric, the best words, the best sentences, the best questions. I'm trying to be the best, but I also know I'm always going to fall short of being perfect. So yeah, I really do believe, and even now I know that there are going to be people who are telling me to not use the word empathy, or it's not about empathy, it's about justice. Sure, but we're emotional creatures. Everyone uses their empathy as a way to make decisions on how to behave, right? That's why people will go to movies and they watch movies and they empathize with the main characters, because they can feel empathy for that character. They understand the situation that the main character is in, right? People love movies, right? So the majority of people, they have empathy and they use empathy to make decisions. I think that is what will move the needle when it comes to animals for a long time as well, not just immediately. Anyway, the bridge that connects the lived experience of us and others is empathy. And that's a bridge we can use to get them to stop exploiting animals. So with this video, I mean to encourage people to make imperfect attempts to communicate to non-vegan animal abusers, because imperfect is realistically the only way to do it. I'm going to finish the video there. It's been a long, rambly one, but I hope you enjoyed.